This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Do you hear that whisper? That little voice that tugs at your heart, telling you to start living your best life. If that sounds like you, then now is the time to join Nectar Growth. It's the only place online where you can connect with and learn from great coaches with different areas of expertise. Why live another day not believing that you're enough, not seeing all that is possible for you? Why live another day dimming your own light? Nectar is the perfect place for you to discover the real you and uncover who you're meant to be. Life is a journey that we are not meant to walk alone. Nectar gives you a nurturing and supportive community to walk with you on your journey. Start living your best life and see what is truly possible. Come join us at nectargrowth.com. You know you're worth it.
Ride.
Weight loss is more than just calories in and calories out. And we all know that diets, well, they suck. What's the solution? Is there a way to hack our brains and achieve lasting weight loss? Joining me today is Jonathan McLernon of Freedom Nutrition Coaching to share his brain-driven weight loss formula. Welcome to the roller coaster, Jonathan.
Hey, thanks for having me. You have a brilliant voice for broadcasting. I just have to say that right away. Because I love music, and I think I have a pretty musical ear. And listening to your delivery, I'm like, oh my gosh, you've clearly done this more than once.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I was that kid in class that it didn't make a difference where they sat me, much to the teacher's dismay. I would just talk. I was just, and you would have thought that a teacher would have encouraged me to go into something like that. No, I just got into this just because I'm like, podcasting kind of looks cool. I like to talk. Maybe this is something I could try.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I'm glad you are doing that. And, it's very interesting, just that point alone, that sometimes people, they fail to recognize sort of an innate ability they have because others maybe that have gone before them don't necessarily recognize it or don't necessarily want to highlight it because it makes them consider, maybe think choices they didn't make that they might have wished they did. So I only share that because I'm kind of I would say a student of human behavior and psychology. And so I like to say all behavior makes sense. And in saying that, it's not to criticize at all, but just to observe and say, well, there's maybe a reason why this occurred. And it actually, I think, lends itself to operating with greater degree of compassion in the world.
Definitely. And that understanding of human behavior, that ties right into what you do when it comes to the world of health and nutrition.
Yes. So
let me ask you this. What's your journey? What's your story? Why is this your passion?
Well, see, I've had quite a varied background. Educationally, like I studied chemistry and marketing psychology. I left a PhD program to become a marine engineer in the Navy. I traveled around the world as an English teacher. I've had 2 failed businesses, and but it was really during my. So I was really a restless soul, I guess you could say. I could just never seem to settle on something. And when traveling around the world, I went through a traumatic experience living in South Africa. And that's really what kind of kicked off this weight loss journey I needed to go on. So after trauma, I didn't really, really nobody's equipped to deal with it. So I was really ill-equipped to really cope with the difficult thoughts and experiences that came up as a result of being traumatized. And so I turned to food. Food is a socially acceptable way to kind of numb our emotions and feelings and really buy headspace in a sense. But the unfortunate byproduct is the side effect is weight gain. And so interestingly, like I used to be fairly athletic and I'm working my way back into being athletic, which is kind of cool. But prior to what I'd went through, I would have thought anybody who was overweight was kind of just lazy or undisciplined But that was because that was my life experience. It wasn't that difficult in my 20s because I was already active and athletic to maintain a relatively like a stable weight. Now, after going through like trauma and eating my feelings and becoming obese, I found myself wading into this like murky world of weight loss and diet culture. And what a murky world it is, because there's a lot of deceptive claims, a lot of emotional predatory behavior. And so I got sucked into a lot of things trying to lose the weight. And really, what it boils down to was I was trying to find a fast and easy, pain free solution to losing weight. And the truth is, that doesn't really exist.
No, there's not. And it's something, you know, I can remember in my 20s, or even like if I go right back to my very early 20s, late teens, I was just naturally petite because that's where my body was at that time. I'm now 48. I've had, 25 plus years of, a bad thyroid. I've had two pregnancies, a two C-sections. So my body just isn't the same. And I think one of the hardest things to wrap your head around when it comes to your overall health and well-being is that component where you have to learn to love yourself first exactly as you are.
Man, you just hit the nail on the head there. That what you just said is really really powerful, because one of the things I think that keeps people stuck is this past identity that they're clinging to. I used to be this. And there comes a point in the adult human experience where we need to let that go and say, that's in the past and it's not coming back. We might need to grieve, actually. And it might sound like strong language, but to really grieve something that isn't coming back, that's okay. Because in order to create change in our life, we have to be able to acknowledge where we're presently at, exactly as we are. And when we can do that with compassion, instead of seeing ourselves as a sum of like failures and mistakes, we could see ourselves as human beings who did the best we could with the current tools we have, up against a world that's engineered to make us obese and a biology that wants us to be storing fat because it's what I call a famine resilient biology.
Yeah. And I'd never thought of it that, you know, for whatever reason, our bodies now have seemed to become
Mm-hmm.
fat resistant. Like it doesn't want to let go of it, no matter how
Yeah.
hard you try. And and again, I've known men like my husband can lose weight. If he wants to turn it on and lose his weight, he can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really annoying because he can drop weight very easily where I just can't. That's
Mm-hmm.
just not what my body is. So for me, I've had to focus on that self love component, but also realize it's not about this constant message that we're being sold about this quick and easy, this solution fixes everything. This is, do this program for 30 days and, you're going to lose
Yeah.
50 pounds. No,
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way because there is a lot of health gurus out there that will actually say that brutal form of punishment that we put our bodies to force it to be something that maybe it's not exactly supposed to be is actually another form of self-sabotage, and it's not being loving towards our bodies.
Yeah, it's quite the opposite. And I would say, because I've lost 100 pounds, and
Wow,
well,
congratulations.
well, thank you.
That's incredible.
And I would say, well, maybe I should put a caveat in there. I've probably lost about 600 pounds. Um, but what I mean by that is
Touche.
yeah, I've lost and gained weight many times over. I was a classic yo-yo dieter. And so I'd ask the question, and I was kind of reflecting on this myself. Why are we attracted to these sort of quick fix fad diet type approaches? And I really like what you shared, that perspective of it is a type of self sabotage because we kind of know secretly it's not going to work, but it gives us a scapegoat. So it gives us a way out. I tried that and it didn't work. It's just I'm a hopeless case. And we're actually reinforcing a story about ourselves that's not true. I, man, I felt like I was a hopeless case. And so I adopted the persona of the jolly fat guy. That became my identity, that I loved to eat, and I wasn't bothered by being obese. And the truth is, I was horribly bothered by it in the privacy of my own head. It made my life much more difficult and much more uncomfortable. And I could remember what it was like to be more athletic, to be more physically able. And now I have a young son, and I say I don't ever want to be a sideline dad. I want to be physically active in his life, because he's 7 months old, and the kid just his limbs just do not stop moving. And I'm like, oh my
They
gosh,
only get busier.
yeah, this is what's waiting for me. I gotta be able to keep up, So, but I think we're attracted to the idea because we want to believe it to be true. Because it's kind of, in one sense, it's kind of discouraging to acknowledge that the reality of weight loss, if we want it to be permanent, is going to be a real challenge. Because we have a world, a 21st century world. I say to people when I work with them, let's just understand what we're up against here. So we have a sedentary way of being. We have technology companies that deliberately engineer technology to be addictive and to keep us, it's called the attention economy. We have food manufacturers who have spent billions of dollars studying psychology and biology and biochemistry and figuring exactly how to create the most addictive food products to keep us consuming them, and they want us to consume more and more and more. And I don't want this to become a critique about capitalism, because I still think capitalism has its merits. But I mean, it's kind of the dark side of capitalism, that we're driven into this massive consumer society, and the byproduct of that is we end up sedentary, obese, and stressed out. And I don't think it's nowhere close to what we could be.
Exactly. And what's even scarier, on your note about the messaging that we're getting from these large corporations to buy their products, a few episodes ago, I interviewed J. Robert Parker, who was a hypnotherapist.
Okay.
And I asked him about, is that sort of component of hypnosis used by our media in advertising and whatnot? And he said, whether it's, the political arena, the, corporations, whatever it is, all of those big guys, they are employing that hypnotic messaging to program us to buy things. So, I think, losing weight even 20 years ago would have been very, very different than it is now, because it's our gadgets, there's constantly the messaging coming up, and it's different ways. And I've even questioned certain channels on, say, TikTok, and the messages that they're sending, and it's like, is that a real person, or is this a really genius marketing scheme?
And that's there's a rabbit hole for you,
Oh, I know.
you could get into the world of I guess it's like AI and virtual reality, but there's this blending of it, where you can create this very humanoid-like character through like advanced video editing technology. That's
Deep
not
darks. The deep fakes.
a deep fakes. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not outside the realm of possibility. Because ultimately, what is this really about? We could say it. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're getting political here. I'm like, but like those in power like to maintain their power, and if they have a means to keep a large population of people subjugated, it's kind of a natural human instinct to do that, whether whether it's nefarious or not. And so, if we can keep people sedentary and overweight, well, there's never going to be any risk of, if we're going to get like a little bit primal, there's never going to be risk of like tyranny and or sort of rebellion against tyranny or anything, because people are just physically not able.
They're not going to be able to get their butts off the sofa.
Right. We have people just well, maybe we'll take one step back, because you talked about something, and I like to refer to it as like playing with a cheat code. So these companies are basically playing with a cheat code because they're bypassing a certain part of our brain, and they know exactly what they're doing. So we could logically say, well, I know it's not healthy to eat McDonald's, but whenever we find ourselves using that sort of language where I know I shouldn't do this, but, or I know it's not good for me, but, and so on, we're going from the prefrontal cortex to the more primal part of our brain, which is driven by avoiding discomfort and seeking out pleasure. It's a very primal kind of sort of being. And, we could say like being comfortable is the drive of our primal nervous system. But there's something about us that's human that rises above that and says, I'm willing to be uncomfortable because I want to grow and advance myself as a human being. And that's kind of the tension that we find ourselves living in. So we're being sold comfort. Don't change. Remain the same. Don't look to grow and develop. Just watch Netflix and eat this comforting food. And it's an uphill battle to fight against that when that's so pervasive in our day-to-day life now.
And even, given, the global situation that we've been in for 18 months, that further solidified those bad habits in people today. So tell me, what is your brain-driven process when it comes to weight loss?
Yeah, so brain-driven weight loss is kind of a term that I've coined because I really want to shine a light on the fact that we could say, yes, what we eat and how we choose to be active or not does influence our health and weight. The whole eat less, move more, which is a very incomplete statement. It's actually the brain that drives our decision making and our actions. So many of our efforts to create change, let's say to create weight loss, they will take an outside-in approach. Here is my set of rules that I'm imposing on you that you start following today, which goes completely against all of your hardwired behavior patterns, habits, psychology, mindset, and emotions. So it's actually failing to acknowledge the internal environment, the emotions, the mindset, the psychology, and the habits that are most powerfully influencing our behavior and creating the results we're experiencing. To add to that, many of our actions take place at the subconscious or the unconscious level, partly because our brain forms habits. It's our brain is about being efficient. And so if you repeat a behavior a couple times, it goes, cool, let's move this back into the midbrain and let that become a habit that we don't consciously think about doing. Tying your shoes. Maybe a more complex example is if you've ever driven from one place to another, you get there and you go, oh my gosh, I don't remember driving here.
Autopilot.
Right. That's how but you got there safely. That's how powerful these unconscious behaviors are. And so we have that, and then we factor in our sense of identity. So there's also, I go back to, there's this kind of this primal biological security mechanism, I guess we'd call it, where our brain wants to keep us safe. And so the more things it can hold stable and the same and familiar, the easier it is for the brain to keep you safe. So when we talk about like a sense of identity, so when I was the jolly fat guy, that's who I saw myself to be. My brain, in a sense, would push me to carry out these behaviors that reinforce that identity. And so if we want to create permanent weight loss, we actually have to create permanent change. And so we can only create permanent change by establishing a new set of behaviors, new pattern of behaviors. We could call that a lifestyle, habits, a sense of identity. So there's these factors that are all taking place in the brain that we have to address if we want to create permanent change. And our brain has this really cool property called neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to rewire itself. So we can do this, but it seems like most attempts at weight loss completely ignore this massive driving factor in our behaviors.
So how do we create that permanent change, figure out what it is that we need to change, and develop that new identity, that new sense of self, so that we are creating the new pathways in our mind?
I would say bit by bit. And it's kind of, it'd be a fun play on computer language as well. But, I asked the question, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. But the tendency is, so let's say the elephant is a metaphor for a very large problem that we're facing. And we look at that and we look at the scope of the problem and we go, oh my gosh, this is huge. It's way bigger than me. There's no way that I can tackle this all at once. And we get overwhelmed and discouraged and daunted and withdraw from that. But part of the reason why we try to swallow the elephant whole, so to speak, is because, let's say that problem has become very painful in our life and we get to a breaking point where we go, I just want this gone. And that gets us to this emotional state where we will buy these quick fixes. We will buy these magic pills. Even though deep down we kind of know they're not going to work, we're going to go that way because it's this emotional desire to no longer be in pain. And so it's, in one sense, my messaging is a little bit of an uphill battle, even though I'm telling the truth to people, that this process will take time. But it's a tortoise versus hare scenario where, you know, starting and stopping and starting, like, yeah, you might run fast when you're running, but if you stop and break down and burn out repeatedly, the person that's going slow and steady, piece by piece, step by step, is actually the one that's going to last. And the reason this works is because I call it like not triggering the emotional defensive brick wall. So if we try to introduce too much change at once, our brain goes, oh my gosh, nope, we can't do this. That's too much. That's too much departure from who we are. And it will drive you to go back to your old familiar patterns of behavior. But if we build them in piece by piece, step by step, reverse engineering your healthy lifestyle in that fashion, it begins to stick. And how do we change our sense of identity? We start to take subtle actions that are, like I said, they're opposite or that run counter to our sense of identity. So if I was the jolly fat guy, exercise was not really a part of me. But if I'm now becoming a healthy dad, then I will take actions in congruence with the new identity that I want to adopt. And it's a bit of a back and forth process. And it's funny that this is the roller coaster podcast, because I'm like, man, this is what the process is really genuinely like.
But any process, whether we're looking at, changing our mindset, changing our habits, anything like that, I think if we don't acknowledge that there will be ups and downs, then you're setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, it's like anything. There's ebbs and flows in life. Yeah, there's good days, there are bad days. But as long as you have more of those good days, then that's what matters. But it's too easy to focus on that one bad day that you were just felt like crap, and you ate the chips and you drank the pop, drank the wine. But that was just one day.
Yeah. And what I try to encourage people, this is a phrase another phrase I've coined. I have these Johnisms, I guess they get called. But weight loss is a doorway. It's not a destination.
Yeah.
And when we understand that, see, weight loss will improve the health of most people. It will improve metabolic health. It will lower inflammation. It will improve cardiovascular health. Not that these things never sell programs like, oh, have better, healthier arteries. Hooray! That's not exactly what people are putting their hands up for. But really, like, a number on the scale is actually just a placeholder for this future version of ourselves that we feel we want to become. Ultimately, what we're looking for is, I want to be comfortable in my skin. I want to wear whatever, I should go shopping in my closet. I want to be able to, ride a bike if I want to ride a bike, hike a mountain, play with my kids or grandkids. So it's really about kind of this freedom to do activities that you want to do. It's an opportunity to experience life more fully. And so if we can move away, I almost wish, I meet people where they're at because people want to lose weight, and I say, I'll help you with weight loss. But I wish I could say, like, side effects may include weight loss. In other words,
yeah,
that's a byproduct of what we're doing, because ultimately what we want is we want you to become healthier. We want you to become more independent, more mobile, more living life more vibrantly, not just seeing a number on the scale.
And that's the philosophy that I've adopted in the last couple of years. Again, loving myself exactly where I am, but also aiming for a healthier body, not a number on a scale. I put the scale away. I don't know when was the last time I weighed myself. And I'm always about the baby steps. What are those small little things that you can do? It's one little thing that you can do that eventually becomes the habit.
Yeah.
That changes the behavior.
Yeah. And speaking of habits, so one of the things that I teach is this concept called CMG, or can't miss goals. So what will ultimately dictate the success of forming a habit is the repeatability of the behavior. So if you say, I'm going to work out for 60 minutes a day, 5 days a week, when you've been living a sedentary lifestyle, you have probably a 96% chance of failure in establishing that as a pattern of behavior, because it's far too different from your current pattern of behavior. But if you start by saying, I'm going to go for a 5-minute walk every day, that is so much more doable. Now, really, it's not about the 5-minute walk. It's about wiring in the pattern of behavior that every day I will take a deliberate action towards my health. You can always build on it. And so I started with this goal of 5,000 steps a day. And I got up to 166 days before I got a bit of a cold and I lost my streak. Um, but it also becomes a matter of like, don't break the chain. Every day I add to it. It's like, I'm at 100 days, I'm at 125 days, I'm at 150 days, and I just want to keep it going. 5,000 steps was enough that I had to do some sort of deliberate activity every day to keep the streak going. Now, the average over that period of time was more like 8,000 or 8,200 steps a day. But some days were only just a little over 5,000. Other days were over 11,000. So the idea behind having this CMG, or this can't miss goal, is it gets us into a repeated pattern of behavior that we can always build on when we have the time, capacity, or resources to do so.
And it also gives us, by focusing on that, it also gives you those small wins.
Yes,
And
gives us the dopamine.
it's like, okay, yeah, I did my walk every day. Who cares? It was a 5-minute walk. I did my walk every day for 30 days. That's a win. And I'm guessing that somehow that plays into rewiring the brain, because you've created success. You are good at something. You do follow through.
Yeah, it absolutely does, because part of it is our brain forms habits, and if we want a habit to form, the cool thing is you can then build on top of it. So let's say I might start with an anchor habit of brushing my teeth. Well, so I brush my teeth every morning. I do weigh myself, and I say I can do it now because of a healthy relationship with the scale. And it's kind of just a little my own personal accountability check. If you don't have a healthy relationship with the scale, don't use it. But I'll weigh myself. I'll drink 500 mils of water. So I'll start by hydrating. And then I'll go downstairs, get on my recumbent bike, and go for like a 10-minute ride. It's not about a monumental effort. It started with brushing my teeth and then adding in, maybe drink 500 mils of water first thing in the morning. And then started adding in going for a little short ride on my recumbent bike just to get some blood flowing and so on. And bit by bit, because we actually waste a lot of time, but a lot of it happens on autopilot, so we're not really aware of how much time we waste. And so rather than trying to like stop doing unhelpful behaviors, it's start wedging in little healthy behaviors, and as they start to grow in what they do, we kind of start to nudge out the less healthy behaviors. So now if I want to watch something on YouTube, I'm going to go sit on my recumbent bike, and even if I'm not meant to be pedaling that hard, but I'll put my phone there and I'll watch it on YouTube, and I'll ride on my recumbent bike instead of just sitting in my chair and watching it. So just little shifts like this. It doesn't have to look like maybe the way the bodybuilding industry or the fitness industry would make it look like. I don't look like a fitness model. I used to be obese. I got loose skin, man. Like that's the reality of it. And even just learning to love that. And so it's almost like I would say, like, start small and just create like a little wedge, and then just bit by bit gently tap that wedge in and expand what it is that you're doing. And as you start to get these wins, it starts to feel really good. Don't downplay the tiny wins, because they represent a bigger shift happening in your mind.
Those tiny wins will, when you get to a certain segment of your journey, you'll look back and all those tiny wins will equal a big win.
Absolutely. I visualize the road to success, this metaphorical road to success. It's like this cobblestone highway from the Roman Empire. They built highways all over Europe, and they didn't have paving technology and smooth superhighways. They made these bumpy brick roads. And it's like every little behavior is like adding one more brick in this road to success.
And you've taken this passion for health and nutrition. You've taken this, and you now coach people
I
in
do.
this. So tell me a little bit about how you help people.
Yeah, so I have a program called Lifestyle 180, and it's a 180-day program. I'm really chuffed about the clever name, because it also means like 180 degrees, so it's a shift in direction in your life. But maybe I'll take one step back and say, so most weight loss programs, they really involve like strict food rules, restrictive meal plans, very often expensive supplement regimes. And it's kind of the equivalent of trying to force somebody into a temporary straitjacket. You're trying to unnaturally force weight loss to happen. And then very often it actually involves like shame, judgment, coercion, just this downright terrible coaching. Because if you're going into these programs, it's like they want more people for their trophy wall. And they'll do whatever they have to try and get, once they have your before and after picture, they don't care about the after. And so I said, I need to do something different here. And so I try to marry 3 key concepts. One is the science of metabolism, so that does matter. The psychology of behavior change, and then ultimately the compassion of human connection. Really, really, really important. Because the other thing is I want to empower every individual I work with to have an active role in reverse engineering their own healthy lifestyle. So I would say everyone that I work with, I treat it like this collaborative partnership. So we're 2 experts working together towards a common goal. I am not superior to you. You are the expert of your life experience, and I bring my expertise in nutrition and change psychology and working with hundreds of clients. So together, rather than me dictating to you what you must do, we're going to work together on shaping and reverse engineering this lifestyle for you. But because you have an active hand in shaping it, you have a say in how this is going to go, you are much more likely to stick to this versus reject any rules I give you and say, it didn't work for me.
That is a truly unique approach. Very, very unique, because it always seems to be, I'm the guru, I know everything, you're going to listen to me, thou shalt. And, your approach is definitely, it's more of a partnership. It really, it changes the game. Definitely.
Well, it's very disempowering to feel like you kind of have to like submit to this guru and follow their direction. Like how human beings have a strong sense of independence and a desire for autonomy. And so I found that when I was handing out meal plans and macro ratios and things like that, that clients wouldn't stick for me for more than like 6 to 8 weeks because they couldn't stick to it. And they felt so ashamed for failing the rules I was putting forward that they would just like ghost me. And when I shifted into this style of collaborative partnership, that's when I have clients sometimes that have been with me for 2.5 years, because so they go beyond Lifestyle 180. There is, I have post Lifestyle 180 programs kind of thing, because they appreciate and value this collaborative effort. So I create the space for anyone to wrestle with their demons in the light. You can bring any struggle you have into the coaching sphere. You can lay it all out in front of me. You can tell me you snorted cocaine and kicked a puppy off a cliff. I'm not going to judge you for that. We will try to understand why that behavior happened. So I will ask questions. I will hold you to account to your goals. But it's done in a way where there isn't judgment. There's compassion. Let's understand why this happened. And when we understand why it happened, we can avoid it happening in the future. So none of my clients ever feel judged. And it's such a departure from how I used to treat myself. I used to be so hard on myself. I used to like spite my body, hate my body, like loathe it and try and force it to do things and get so angry when it didn't. And it's like that approach does not work. If it was going to work, it would have worked by now. And so there's this fear out there, I think, that if we love ourselves, if we treat ourselves with compassion, that somehow we won't change. Not true.
No, not true at all. Not true at all. Jonathan, I was going to ask you for your words of wisdom, but you've shared so much value. Where is the best place for people to connect with you?
freedomnutritioncoach.com. That's my website. I do have a podcast called Wellness Unplugged. So you could just go to freedomnutrition.rocks/wellness unplugged. I like to call it conversations about between the before and after. That's kind of the goal of it. So helping people to see the reality of change. And then if people would like, I do have a short ebook called Crush Your Cravings. That can help people to really understand not only like why they emotionally or boredom eat and things like that, but steps they can take to move past that unhelpful behavior. So freedomnutrition.rocks/crush your cravings. And so I'd say those are the best places to find me.
To connect with Jonathan, make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to have all of the links in there. And Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
like a roller coaster, baby, baby.